Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
Our topic today is the process of jury selection in Idaho. And as we discuss how we do this in our state, for you watching our program in other states, I'm sure the jury selection is very similar. And of course, juries are essential to the judicial system of our country and to a fair trial, and it's guaranteed in both federal and state courts under the United States Constitution. We're so pleased to have our guest today, Gomer Davis, a gentleman I've known for a long time, and he serves as the Kootenai County, Idaho Jury Commissioner. And Mr. Davis, welcome to the program. It's so nice for you to take time to be with us, and I want to also commend you for how you run the program of jury selection. You do an excellent job.
Thank you.
And as always, I'm very pleased to have our regular panelist, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and it'll be very appropriate today for the subject because she'll certainly be familiar as an attorney. And with that, Janelle will commence today's question with our guest, Gomer Davis.
Gomer, welcome to the program. You and I have worked together for a long time, and I can say for the benefit of our viewers that you do an excellent job, and you also have a very well-formulated philosophy about jury service. You've served on some statewide committees, and you're very knowledgeable about the process. Let's start with how people get on a jury pool. How do you formulate the large group of names that you're going to send letters out to?
We primarily use two lists. That would be the voter's registration list and the driver's license list. We can use others. The Supreme Court allows us to do that, but these are the best two, and it produces a list, I think, that's probably fairest and widest.
And how often is your name going to come up on that list, generally speaking?
Well, your name is on the master list
on
itself.
The master
well,
list.
Everybody's name is on the master list that gets a driver's license in Idaho or votes here in Kootenai County. How often your name comes up for service, is that your question?
That's the next
Well,
question.
It's almost like a lottery. And some people, I tell them when they tell me I've served 10 times now or 5 times, and other folks have served never. Myself, I have never served on jury duty. My wife has been called 5 times. It's just a random selection process. So once you serve on jury duty, your name must be taken out of eligibility for a minimum of 2 years. Then your name goes right back in the master list, and that's currently about 85,000 names in Kootenai County. And if it's your turn, it'll come up again.
And so then you're going to send me a letter, and you're going to say, welcome.
Welcome.
And you get to serve on jury duty, or at least I'm going to be asked to reply to some questions.
Yes, we send a questionnaire out at the first mailing, and that's to qualify you as a juror. There's some questions on there that are statutory questions dealing with residency requirements, age requirements, those kind of things. If you are not a resident of Kootenai County, if you're not a citizen of the United States, if you're under 18, you're disqualified from service. If you're over 70, you may opt out of jury service, although we really hate to see that. I really like to see the folks that, we had one not too long ago that was in his mid-80s that wanted to serve, and it pleased me a great deal to see that.
I can't resist, Gomer, from saying that like some people have been called 10 times and some others not at all. I think I would advise people like your wife 5 times, they must be lucky, so they should play the real lottery. They might win because their names seem to be a fortune. I'm just in jest.
It's the same advice I offer sometimes.
Okay.
It doesn't appease them, but I do.
Yeah, I don't think they're as lucky with the regular lottery as they are with the jury process. With that humor aside, let's talk a little bit about the process. You know, you may be called for jury duty. In other words, you fill out the questionnaire and you send it back in almost immediately. And then about how long is it before an individual gets a notice that they are to report for jury duty?
Usually within 2 months.
Yes. In this case here, some other places it may be either longer or shorter. It's not the same everywhere, I assume.
Yeah, there's a different way of doing it in other places. You know, they might mail out a 2-step process where they mail a questionnaire and the summons all at the same time.
I see.
And they return that questionnaire to the jury commissioner. And usually that's a greater period of time. You could come at the front end of it or the back end of it. You might be several months out. We try and keep it at a reasonably short period of time. We mail very, very frequently because people, they just forget this stuff. They put it somewhere in a drawer and jury duty is gone. They'll make plans. They go on vacations and things like that. if we know, or if we can tell them that it's going to be within 2 months probably that you'll serve, it's fairly fresh. And if they're going to make a plan, they'll call us and say, you know, gee whiz, I have to go somewhere on something for my job. So we work with them in that regard.
Yes, I know there's part of your form is that indicating if you're going to be away at college or on a business trip or whatever it may be, you can indicate that, and you've been very generous to say we can postpone. They'll have to serve another time, but you can postpone up to, I believe you say, approximately 6 months.
Yes. Other jurisdictions have done it differently and still do it differently, where it's just they send you a summons and you come, period, the end. As a jury commissioner, we're right in the middle of that crunch that people are experiencing, and they'll call us up. And Judge Heyman, when he was administrative judge, really helped us a great deal when he come up with his statement on how we deal with these requests and everything. And he said, it's far better to move somebody down a little bit, work with them, than to excuse them, because we can't excuse them. When we tell them that and we have no alternative for them, there's some frustration on everybody's part. So Judge Heyman, I think, probably was the first guy that instituted this, let's work with them a little bit, philosophy, and it's worked very well for us here.
Another point I want to make, and we're going to get into when they arrive and how they might be on the jury, how that process works. But one thing that impressed me about your process is that if I'm notified that I'm up for jury duty, say the first week of April, and in our county here normally it's a week's possible duty, but I have a number I can call for that jury panel that I'm on, like panel 32 on Sunday night. And I know the first time I was chosen, they said there are no juries next week at all, so you're excused for the next 2 years.
Yes.
The next time I called and said that you will be needed on Monday for possible jury duty. So that's a very, very good system, isn't it? So that a person doesn't have to actually show up if there's not going to be any jury trials that week.
I think it's just wonderful for the people, because often they can even call in Friday night after work and they can tell their boss, you know, I'm not going to be here at work next week because I've got to be in. Or else they can say, I got a reprieve. I'm going to be here at work Monday or the whole week or something like that. We also have the one-day services where they call in each night because there are cancellations. And, you know, when people call up and say, I don't have time to do jury duty, and they do that all the time, once we walk them through the process and how it works, and the fact that, you know, probably you're not going to be here 5 days. You know, there's 2 or 3 trials that you're going to be responsible for that starts in that week's period of time. And 50 people come in and we choose 12. And you have, you know, you get back to numbers again, you have 1 chance in 5, 1 chance in 4 of getting picked. And if you're not picked, you'll be gone by 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. Sure. And you won't have to return for a couple of days. So, you know, I try and help people understand that. It's not like, here's a week and I'm going to take a whole week of your life all day, every day. It usually doesn't work out that way. So, you know, and kind of working with them, they come around usually and say, okay, well,
you're doing everything you can to let them know in advance. And that's really important.
Their time is so valuable. You know, I mean, people, for the most part in Kootenai County, most of us are living, you know, what we make, we spend. And some of the employers in Kootenai County, the small employers, do not reimburse their employees. They don't pay their salary. Others do, but those that don't, it's a real loss.
North Idaho College does. I want to give them credit for doing that. One other question before I go back to Janelle. My secretary recently was called to jury duty, and she went and she told me who the judge was. And so I said to her, well, that means that you are in the magistrate court. So, and for those viewers outside the state, magistrate would be our court of limited jurisdiction, and then we have the district court for the superior court. So that's the next thing. When they get called, they'll be either in magistrate court or district court.
Or in a rare case, a grand jury.
Okay.
Or even a court of, or a jury of inquiry.
Okay.
Like an inquest.
Okay.
But that's very, very rare.
But most of the time it'll be either magistrate or district court.
Yes.
And so if they get called to magistrate court, they know that they're not going to be dealing with felony cases.
That's correct. Well, they don't know, but if they ask, we can certainly.
But certainly it's a good thing for them to know.
Yes.
That the magistrate court never hears or does not conduct the trial in felony cases, or in civil cases, I believe, after $10,000.
There is a dollar figure, and Janelle could probably tell us what that is. You know, I was looking through the law book today, and it says $500. But that's an old law that's on the books, and I think it's been modified, and $10,000, I think, is the correct
I'll
number.
let Janelle pick up here.
Yeah.
I want to give you a chance, Gomer, to talk a little bit about people who don't show up, just plain not show up, and to issue an admonition, I guess you would say, that it's far better to deal with those things ahead of time than it is after the fact.
I'm really proud to say that it's a very rare occasion that somebody does not show up. I mean, they take a bullheaded position and say, I'm not showing up, period. Usually it's they forgot or they misplaced something, or life just intruded in their illness or whatever. And we'll just go ahead and reset them. If I can discern from talking with them when they don't show up that morning, I'll go ahead and call them and find out just what's happening in their life that caused them not to show up. And if it's a reasonable situation, the judges encourage us to then work with that person again, reset them, and just get them to commit to a date certain. And once they commit to a date certain, we send them a new summons. Usually they do show up the next time. It's very, very rare that somebody just digs in their heels and say, I'm not going to do it.
I also want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about why a jury panel might not go at all, why things might just go away. What happens? What's going on behind the scenes?
Well, there's always the negotiations between attorneys to determine whether or not they're going to plea bargain or in a civil case make some arrangement, agree to a certain sum of money that would exchange hands if it's a civil case. And sometimes the attorneys, it just seems like they do their best work the day before the trial. Although it's been set for 6 months, it always amazes me. And then Tony will call in and we say to him, it's all gone. Although it wasn't yesterday, it is now, and you don't have to come in. It's kind of sad because we waste people. Every time we have to bring in a panel of 50, we have to send out several hundred questionnaires to get a qualified number of people. It used to be that, and this is one of the things that I'm really passionate about, Tony, and that in the early 80s, we used to mail out 500 questionnaires at a time, and we would get back like 100 good ones. And we kind of scratched our head and say, why is this happening? There's an awful lot of work going in here to produce juries. Well, it turns out that, we were getting kind of old information. At that time, the driver's license people in Boise would send you here at the college that list which you would reproduce for us in a form that we could use. But it was kind of old. We would mail out stuff and we would hear from a mother saying, well, this is my son. He's in the Navy. He's been there 18 years. Or my husband died 10 years ago. And we thought, well, this is not very fresh information. Another thing that we noticed was that everybody had the same color hair as you and I and Janelle on that jury.
Some of us get great at a young age, though.
Yes, that's true. You did. 30 years ago, you probably don't remember, I was one of your students in class. But it just seemed to me that this is not rendering a fair cross-section of the society in which we live. That includes young people as well as old people, every kind of people. So we did a few things to change that. Instead of getting the driver's license list once every 2 years or 3 years as it was then, and you know how mobile people are.
Right.
I mean, 3 years, they're gone twice.
Sure.
Well, now we go over to our driver's license people here in Kootenai County every morning. And I get a stack of cards that big who got driver's licenses yesterday. And that's hand put in our computer every morning. So we have, I think we have probably the freshest and best master jury list of anybody, anywhere.
And
I don't know anybody that does it daily.
So with the voter list, you also get that in fast.
We get that in once a month. They send us a list. So this is, it's built from the voters registration list, added to by driver's licenses, added to by changes and additions to the voters list. And people are always surprised when they move here from another state, and 6 weeks later they get a request from our office to fill out a questionnaire. They say, how do you catch me so fast? Because you live here, and you have the right and the responsibility to participate.
Now, you get there, it's the day of the trial, and assuming that there's not been a plea bargain, the defendant has not pled in a criminal case, or in a civil case that there's been no settlement, and the case is going to go. What happens the first thing when people arrive in the morning?
The first thing is everybody has questions. For most of the people that come in, it's their first time, and they're scared, and they don't know what to do, and they think they're going to be making a mistake or something like that. We try to put them at ease. You know most of the people in our office, Janelle. They're really, really good people, and they do a good job at putting people at ease. The next thing that we do is show a film that's produced by the Supreme Court that very simply and with enough detail to help them understand what they're going to do, how the process works, the different kinds of trials that they might be seeing, magistrate, district, civil, criminal, whatever. And the people in the courtroom, they name them. They say, this is the judge, this is the clerk, this is the bailiff, this is their job, this is their responsibility, and here's how a trial goes. Just simply and basically, the jury's picked, the evidence is given to you, and you make a decision. And people, like you say, sometimes before they come in, they're afraid, they don't know what to do, they don't want to come in, and they walk out saying, this is a pretty good deal, this is a pretty good process. I like the way our country works. That's why I guess I'm kind of passionate. If we can teach the same time we help people do their responsible thing, it feels good.
I want to lead up on Janelle's excellent question, and that is, when I was there in district court for jury duty last year, our particular pool had 72. Now,
Okay.
I know some have larger pools, and I suppose it has something to do with the type of trial and all that, but 72 of us arrived in the courtroom, and we got, you did have the excellent film, and then your office explained some things, and the judge also explained some things. But then the judge and the attorneys, of course with the judge supervising, have responsibility to try to find 12 out of that 72 or an alternate or two.
Yes.
I think that's the one thing that probably citizens understand least. How do you go about finding which ones, and then of course once they're selected, the others get excused. Take us through some of the kind of things that lawyers and judges would be looking for, and why someone would be excused, or even the judge may excuse someone. Take us through some of those things and the reasons.
Well, primarily what everybody in the courtroom is looking for is a fair, unbiased group of people to listen to the problem that two other people are having, either as two people in a civil suit or a criminal action involving the state and a defendant. Everybody just wants a fair, impartial jury. And the judge begins by asking some questions that kind of like, does any of you people know the defendant?
Right.
You know, in ancient history, it used to be that everybody had to know the defendant before you could be a juror. Nowadays, it's pretty much if you know them, then they have to dig deeper and find out if in that knowledge of that person, can you really be fair? Are you related to them? Do you know the attorneys? Have your life circumstances been anything like what's on trial here today? In other words, if it's a DUI trial, anybody in your family ever been harmed by a drunken driver? They want to know if you're able to set aside all that stuff. First of all, is there something there? Secondly, can you set it aside and just treat this, just listen and be fair to everybody? So that's basically the process that's going on there. The judge can excuse based on some of your answers. The attorneys can excuse based on whatever they want. There's a certain number of preemptory challenges.
Certainly in like capital offenses or major felonies, the attorneys have more of, I would call a quota, so they could excuse individuals.
Yes.
And they don't have to tell those being excused why.
No.
I know when I was there, some people were excused. They went into chambers with the judge and they gave the list, and he came out and excused those individuals. Another couple of things would be, what if it is that really, incredibly difficult type of trial when the death penalty might be involved? One of the questions might be, do you believe in the death penalty? Would that be a question?
Oh, yes. Yes.
And that'd be grounds for excusing someone from the prosecution side if they did not believe the death penalty, if they were asking for the death penalty.
I think you probably would be best served by asking a judge to answer that question. I don't know what goes on in his mind.
Okay. Now let's suppose the jury's been selected and there are 12, and let's say we have one alternate. Then right at that time, is there kind of a recess and the other members, the potential jurors, are excused?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And they don't have to wait around the rest of the week for...
No, but they're invited to, and sometimes they do.
Janelle Berg.
Well, while you're on jury duty, you're going to be paid.
Oh, yes.
And you might explain about that payment.
You're, I guess, reimbursed for costs of getting there. Currently, we're paying 32.5 cents a mile from the home of record in Kootenai County to the courthouse and back. We have people that work in Seattle. They go over there and work, and they write on their little thing, my mileage is 650 miles. That doesn't work. In addition to mileage, you're paid $5 per half day and $10 per full day, anything over 4 hours. And again, that's just meant to pay for your lunch or something like that. We just can't pay, everybody's salary. If we did, you have to maybe imagine where that comes from. You and I and everybody else that pays taxes in this county, my budget would go up from about $200,000 a year to $2.5 million or something like that.
Probably higher.
It would be tremendous.
Now, Gomer's also in charge of the bailiffs,
Yes.
and they had bailiff, and the bailiff is going to be the person in the courtroom under our system that's going to oversee the jury or going to be with the jury. And can you explain a little bit how that happens and the confidentiality of that matter?
Yeah, they're kind of like a mother hen. They really You've seen some of those guys. They really take to meeting these people's needs and listening to their situations and protecting them, things like that. And of course, it's necessary that they do keep them untainted, and what I mean by that is that they can't hear anything that they're not supposed to hear. The judge rules, and sometimes he rules outside of the presence of the jury. The bailiff at that point removes them from the courtroom and takes them to the jury room. Make sure that there's no tainting going on by them hearing something that they should not hear, something that the judge deems outside of their purview. So that's one of the things that we do. We make sure that they get their meals, if they want anything that we can to make them comfortable. It's really amazing to me, Janelle, the rapport that goes on between the bailiffs and the jurors. We have had jurors send cards to bailiffs a year or more after they've served, or drop in and see them. There's close relationships developed.
Now, juries are not generally sequestered, however, until it's time for the jury to make their decision. In other words, they can go home at night. In generally, in cases, there might be some cases, of course, where juries could be sequestered, but that's not generally the case.
Those are fairly rare. The last one was the case involving the ISP trooper that was shot. That was the last time we had a sequestered jury.
So generally they go home, but they are sequestered after they begin to make the decision.
Yes.
They're sequestered except for the time that they might go home and return the next day.
That's correct.
But they remain together. I want to give you also a chance to talk about the fact that many people come in a little apprehensive about serving as a juror, and they go away saying, this was a great experience. I'm glad I was able to serve my country in this way.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that a little bit already, and usually that stems from the fact that they had no idea of what really goes on there. They watch TV and they get some notions about what jury service is really like, and it's, I think, really far different. When they get in there, jurors begin to take this thing very, very serious. The more serious the trial, the more potential there are for that to happen. We've had jurors literally, cry, shed tears over, this is a very hard thing. When you look at somebody and you say to them, and this is a very, very serious crime, that you are guilty. We as a society have fairly heard everything and say, you're guilty. And that's a hard thing to do to somebody. And by the same token, when you have a victim sitting over here and you look at that defendant and you say, you are not guilty, there's another person concerned with this who's affected deeply. And the jurors are torn between all of this. And this is something I think that they probably weren't aware of beforehand to this extent, but maybe this is one of the things that they're worried about, saying somebody's guilty.
I want to build on that because that's something I want to get across. And Janelle, I think a lot like. I've talked to former jury members after it's all over. They can make some comments and they'll say things like, "I didn't know that when we got into the room to deliberate that people would argue like they do." So if maybe you could help future jurors. They're not all like the 12 Angry Men, where they in that movie where it was really, really intense. But would you share with them that there is disagreements, or there are disagreements in civil and in criminal cases? So kind of help those that you have a right to express yourself as a member of the jury, and sometimes that's in disagreement with another member.
Surprisingly, Tony, I can't tell you very much about what goes on in there. And outside of, maybe a little bit of loud conversation that you hear through a door, bailiffs are not privy to what goes on in there. We have heard comments just like you have, that jurors, they state their positions and they stand by them or work it out together. Jurors have expressed that to me, which is kind of surprising. That I was kind of surprised at how well the 12 people could actually work together and work it out.
But there can be moments that are emotional, and so one juror may say something to another juror that is hurtful to their feelings. It can get to the point of saying, well, why can't you see the evidence, or why can't you come along? And of course, in criminal matters where it has to be unanimous, I know in civil matters you need 9 out of 12 votes in this state. In some states it's unanimous. So in those situations where it has to be unanimous and the vote's 11-1, it can be very, very tense at a time for the one who's dissenting.
Yeah, I'll share a little anecdote for you. Well, it's not an anecdote, it really happened. That was the situation where 11 people thought this is very, very easy to decide. One person decided it wasn't. They discussed for quite some time, and ultimately the one dissenting juror locked themselves in the bathroom, in the jury room, and we had to have a mistrial over that. And that's how firmly that person felt about it. I've discussed it all I'm going to discuss, and that's it.
Yes. Well, that leads me to my other question, and I know you're passionate about this. Your life's very much involved with this really important system called due process. Would you share with our viewers, and maybe it'd help some of our viewers in the future if they're called to jury duty, why is the jury system so important to our justice system and fairness?
Well, you know, it's the part where everybody is touched or should be touched. You know, we live in a country that's, you know, I think it's just a wonderful country, and everybody really needs to. It's going to fall apart if everybody doesn't pay due attention to keeping this country what it is now. And part of that, my part of it, I guess, is jury service. It kind of pains me to see people, and a lot of them do take the position that I'm too busy. I can't do it because of, and the list is just a mile long. But until everybody realizes we have to give something back, we also have the right. All those people that say, I don't want to do it, I'm too busy to do it, they also have the right to a jury trial if the state ever says, you're charged with this. And
or they have a civil suit against someone.
Or somebody else it says, I'm going to sue you over this contract or this fence line or whatever. 12 people, regular people, just everybody out there comes in here and they listen and they make the decision for you. If you two can't make it yourself, we'll make it for you. You have that right. So you have that responsibility to participate when your other neighbor is in there.
It's a great point, because if everyone refused to be on a jury, then when a person had like a civil case, there'd be nobody there to be the jury.
Who's going to do it? It'll be like Eastern Europe or something like that.
On that note, I have to bring the program to conclusion. On behalf of Janelle Burke and our staff, Gomer Davis, the Kootenai County, Idaho Jury Commissioner, thank you. It's been extremely informative. In fact, I'd like to share with you that we're in our 30th year of this program, this PBS program. It's the first time in 30 years we've had this topic. So one thing excited about continuing to do this program, from time to time we do something we've never done before, and you've honored us by being here on this very important subject, and we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know that you've enjoyed and found this informative about jury duty service and how it functions and operates, and even though you're in another state than ours, they certainly are similar from state to state in the United States, and we hope that you appreciate the subject as much as we do, and I'd like to invite you to be with us again next week when we will turn to yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.